Hi, everybody. Welcome. I wanted to thank you all for being here today. My name is Rita Natale. I am the New Haven Recovery Community Center Manager through CCAR, Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. Just real quick, I wanted to tell you why I picked creating a positive culture. When I got hired at CCAR a couple of years ago, I was offered the position of being the center manager at a brand new center. And so I was super excited. I asked Phil where the center was, and he said, well, we don't actually have one yet. So I actually created the culture in New Haven. I was alone the first 11 months of my employment here. I did both roles in the center. And so I thought if there was anything that I might be able to offer for a webinar, that maybe I can share a little bit about how I hopefully think I created a positive culture in New Haven. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I appreciate that very much. Next slide, Michael. So today we're going to be talking about culture, the importance of culture, ways in which culture affects our success or failure as an organization, right? And most importantly, I hope that we're going to be talking about the unwritten things that we do to kind of create the culture that we're hoping for. I think in a lot of ways, culture is created by a lot of the unwritten things. So I'm hoping today we're going to spend some time talking about that. I really believe that whether we intentionally set out to create a particular culture or not, a culture will develop. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind as we move through the presentation. Mike, next slide. So my hope is that you guys will walk away with a better understanding of culture and why it's so important to the organizations that we work at and even in our homes and families. I hope that we can kind of make some connection between how culture impacts the environment that we work in and live in. And I'm certainly hoping that we can share some ideas where we can help each other create a positive culture that we're seeking in our places of employment. So those are definitely what I'm hoping for. And just as a facilitator today, my only expectations is I'm hoping that you guys will come with an open mind, be respectful of other people's thoughts and opinions. And I am certainly hoping that you guys will participate. So I think it's going to be a lot more fun if you guys participate. So I'm looking forward to hearing that, and we can share ideas and work together. So thank you. Mike, next slide. So I want you guys to think about what comes to mind when you see the word culture. What thoughts come to mind? I'd love for a few people to raise their virtual hand, and kind of here's a good opportunity to let me know what comes to mind. So we have a good beginning point here. Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that.
Oops. Hi.
Hi.
It's funny because I was just listening to a podcast with Gabor Mate, and he was talking about his new book and culture. He talks about it scientifically. When you're doing an experiment, you put cells in a culture, and if the cells fail, it's a toxic culture, and if the cells thrive, it's a positive culture. So your culture is, I guess, like your environment. And
I love that, Maureen. Thank you. I really like that. I never thought about it as cells. So thank you. I appreciate that. Ed.
I thought about culture as being to cultivate, to grow, to overcome adversity. And that's usually like in a garden, because, you have rocks, when you throw seeds and stuff, if it lands on a rock, it won't grow. If there's vines or something like that, it can choke your stuff. And then of course, boundaries and all of that. So everything that goes with a garden, I do that with culture. For some reason, I get growth out of that. Thank
you, Edgardo. I appreciate that. And Lazarus, would you like to see your hand?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I have to admit, when I first read the material that came across, I read it quickly, and I didn't misread it, but I thought in terms of embracing different cultures, that the world is a changing place, and in my own experience, having to have a working for and with Japanese culture was certainly a challenge. But then, of course, I thought in terms of the context of setting a culture and being in a lead position. And I'm always reminded of the old term that the fish stinks from the head down. And it's really got to be up to the person running the show to set a good, strong, positive culture.
Thank you, Ed. I love that. You've said that at the center a few times. So, you know, I really take heart to that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Gina.
Hey, Rita.
Hi, Gina.
What comes to mind when I think the word culture? I go back to like school when I learned about culture for the first time from that kind of like, what does culture mean setting? And I think about like the language and the art and like the communication styles and like the people that like make up like a social group. I grew up like learning, like speaking fluent French and like learning a lot about like French culture as opposed to like American culture here. So like I think about how like their culture is different from ours, and what is culture. So like language, for example, that could mean anything. Like how do people communicate? Like what is recovery language basically in this context? Or you know, what is like the art and all the other stuff, like the belief systems, the sciences that make up a particular group of people. And it doesn't have to be like nationality or something like on a big scheme. It could be just a group of people that like come together. I think so.
No, I love that, Gina. I love that. I agree. When you were sharing, I was thinking a group of people who come together for common causes creates a culture, right? So yeah, I love all of those examples. Khalees, we have some friends from the UK here, you guys, two very special women in my heart. So how super exciting to see them here supporting, and I appreciate that more than you know.
Hello. Sorry, we were running a little late. We just got to our hotel. I love this conversation though, and I'm just gonna say this based on my recent experience. I recently went to Northern Ireland, and what comes to my mind whenever I think of culture is the way we make people feel. Like, yes, it encompasses like the conversations, you know, even signage, whatever that is, but are we letting people show up as themselves? Are we embracing them for who they are? And like for the first time since I've lived in the UK, I went to Northern Ireland, and I've always said I missed like the recovery communities and stuff in the US that I had experienced. And I cried because I said I missed it, but I felt it like in my heart. They loved us, they raised us up, and just that experience I had never had in the UK. And so it really comes down to how are we letting people show up and like treating them and how do they feel whenever they come into our environment?
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Nita, is there anything you'd like to add before we go to the next hand?
Whenever I think of the word culture now, I think of CCAR, because the culture that the way we have been welcomed, supported, helped, the friends we've made. The first one actually made it to England recently, and I know more are coming, you know, but to me, if I can even replicate, you know, half of what's been given to me from CCAR, I know I'm going to be doing good work.
Amen, sister.
Hallelujah. I'm
you.
on the road to recovery in Newcastle now.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Kathleen.
Hi guys. Actually, Khalees just like stole what I was going to say. Is, you know, to me, culture is what it feels like when you walk into a place. You know, culture is something you feel when you arrive. You walk into a place and you know if you're welcome. You know if you're valued. You know it oftentimes as soon as you walk in. And so to me, that's what culture is.
Thank you, Kathleen. For those of you who don't know, Kathleen is my partner, and I'm really happy she's here to support me today. So she also works in New Haven for an organization here, and we share resources. And so I just want to say thank you, Kathleen. Denise.
Hi, everyone. For me, culture is the way you express yourself in language, body art, and artistic, like the way you dress, your appearance. That's what culture for me means.
Thank you, Denise. I appreciate this. Is great, you guys. I was worried about participation. So you know what? You guys have already helped
Hey,
me.
Rita.
Yes, Michael.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I was going to come to you next, Mike. I promise. I just wanted to thank everyone for making me feel more relaxed because I was worried about participation and I'm not worried anymore. Go ahead, Mike.
But I the first thing I think of, right, is people like you, right? Because you bring this culture, right, that you make people comfortable and allow them to bring their culture as well. And you think about it, the first, where do we learn our first culture is from home, right? From our families, you know, and whatever we can bring to the table is mixed. And it's like the centers, a great example. There's so many cultures mixed in the center that it just evolves. That culture evolves all the time, and it's a beautiful thing. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Michael. You're going to make me cry. I love Michael. He's been such a great support. And thank you, Michael. See, that's the culture we have at CCAR. And without our team, I don't know. We'll get to it. So anyway, thank you. Next slide, Michael, if everybody, thank you for that, you guys. This is a great beginning to talk about. So for the purpose of the webinar today, okay, we're going to use this definition, okay, just shared understanding. This is kind of what we're going to base the webinar off of what we want to discuss. You know, it's a collection of beliefs, values, and methods of interaction that create the environment of an organization or home. It reflects our expectations as an organization, our philosophy, and the experiences of those that work and frequent. So in our case, our employees who work at CCAR, the leadership that we have at CCAR, but also how the participation we get in the centers, and hopefully, you know, what you guys are all seeking to bring back to your organizations. I also think it determines the future direction of an organization. That's really big on what the culture is and what the leadership vision is, right? So that all plays into a part. So today, this is kind of the definition that we're going to use moving forward, just so everybody knows where a lot of what I'm talking about comes from. Does that make sense to everyone? Awesome. All right, Michael, next slide. So we're going to talk about some of the ways in which we feel that organizational culture is important, right? You know, it governs how organizations make decisions. At CCAR, they talk about culture all the time. It's the top of the leadership. You know, every week they have a leadership meeting, and it's always the topic of conversation is how is our culture? What's going on? Are people feeling safe, secure? How do employees interact with each other? Is there gossip and criticism? Our you know, executive director Phil, which a lot of you know, is a firm believer that if we're not part of the positive culture at an organization, then we're part of the negative culture. There's really no standing still. And, you know, I remember that was a sticking point for actually what got me to leave my last organization and end up at CCAR. Is I went to a training and Phil said that at RCA, and I was kind of annoyed by that because I wasn't in a place that I was happy with, and I had to really check myself. And the next day I came back to Recovery Coach Academy and I shared that, you know, I said I wanted to tell myself that I was part of the negative culture where I was. I complained a lot. You know, I didn't participate in a positive way. I always, you know, pissed and moaned about things that were going on. And, you know, a few short months after that, I left without a job because I wanted to feel better about myself and about the work that I was doing. And then 3 months later, I landed at CCAR. So I think it definitely impacts the way we interact with each other. I think it impacts how much latitude we have, right? In my last organization, I would not have felt safe doing anything without kind of running it up the chain, making sure I got approval. I was always worried about getting in trouble, getting my hand slapped. I did often enough as well. And at CCAR, what I get is, Rita, we trust you. run the center the way you feel that you need to run the center. We got your back and we trust you. And CCAR does that with all of our employees, not just with center managers, with our coaches, with our training team. So I definitely think culture plays a part into how much latitude we feel we have to make decisions. It definitely affects the projects that we get involved in, where we show up, what events we get involved in. So we're all about recovery, right? At CCAR, we're all about putting a positive face on recovery. We just put a table down at the overdose awareness event, but we were there to talk about the 23.5 million people that live in active recovery. So we're always really mindful about the choices we make and the decisions we make to promote the message that recovery is possible. We support harm reduction. We support multiple pathways, but we're always very mindful about the presence we make about saying recovery is possible and we are a positive face of recovery. And I think the culture impacts how we convey information to each other, to not only people in the center, to the people in the community, to people outside the community, people working in their own organizations. We're very mindful and specific and intentional with our information. And for me, it's a good indicator of, whether I'm providing a good product or service at the center. So the center opened December 4th, 2019. 3 months later, we were a brand new center. 3 months later, we were shut down due to COVID. And so everything that we have built here in the last 3 years, we're coming up on 3 years, has been during a pandemic. So I had to really work extra hard to get the center out there, make it be known, let people know what's going on. And I'm happy to say that last month we had 600 people through our doors. So for a brand new center, that's just exceptionally well. And they're leadership is very, very pleased with that. And to me, that shows that the culture is showing that we're providing a good product and a good service to the community. So those are a lot of the ways why, it's so important. Michael, in my opinion, culture single-handedly is the most important aspect of an organization. I think it drives morale. I'm sure a lot of you guys can attest to that, right? It drives future success or failures if we're not paying attention. And I think it's staff retention is a direct result of a culture that people feel safe, included, welcomed, heard, seen. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share about any of that? Can you give an example at your place, how, the importance or how it shows out or how it dictates the way you make decisions somewhere in your organization or in the services you provide? Anybody at all? Go ahead, Khalees, was that your hand?
Khalees left me with her iPad, and it's a dangerous situation because I don't know. I think, just hearing you talk about your center and your environment, when I first decided to dip my toes into working in this field in the UK, I just had the complete opposite experience of what you had at CCAR. And that's what just resonated with me. I was told there were two pathways, and the pathway was a 12-step fellowship or a methadone prescription. I was told the priority was to sell baked beans on toast for breakfast for 30p and just try to have a conversation with someone. And when I talked about, could we do something new and exciting like recovery coaching, one of my colleagues told my manager he needed to put me back in my box. And I just went, wow, from what you described there to what I felt and experienced. And I think after 6 months of it really knocking my confidence and me just kind of going into a depressive hole, I just thought, I can be better than that. There is a different way. And even if these people don't agree with it, there's a different path I can follow. And it does come down to culture. If one person says one thing wrong, there's 99 other people that are saying something good. And I just think we have to remember that because it's so easy. Culture says right now, everybody needs to have lots of likes on social media. Everybody needs to be cheering you on, and over the past 2.5 years of my journey of CCAR, I've gone, actually, Everybody doesn't need to be, but the people that matter, matter. And if they're okay with it, then I'm learning to block out the other noise. But I'm so grateful for the culture that you, Michael, Maisha, Phil, Stacy, everybody, Rebecca, everybody at CCAR are just role models to me through every interaction, whether that be a Facebook message, an email. You meet me where I'm at, and you communicate with me how I need to be communicated with, and you make space and time, whether it's once a month, once 3 months, or twice in a week. And to me, that is just the culture that I believe people in England should have access to. So thank you.
Thank you, Nita. And I just want to add, despite all those obstacles that Nita had in the beginning, they are killing it over there in the UK with recovery support. Couldn't be prouder of them, and they're amazing. They're just amazing. So please check them out. But you guys
I'm just going to
it.
change devices. Kalisa's fixing to host a UK all recovery meeting. So
Okay.
I'm going to jump on another device and log back in.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Orlando.
Hey guys. You gotta mute your
Go for it.
hello?
I can hear you.
Well,
Orlando.
what I have noticed, especially working with Edgardo and visiting CCAR a few times, is the impact that it has had on the people that have gone there. And to me, that is the best part of the culture that has been created, because it shows that people are talking about it, right? The culture has become its own advertisement. Literally, people that hear about CCAR or hear about an organization that does right by them and does things that other organizations don't care to do, that's your advertisement for the services you provide. And I think CCAR is the perfect model of that. Perfect model.
Thank you, Orlando. That means a lot to me. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Edgardo.
Thank you.
Mine's on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Now I can hear you. Cannot hear you. You muted.
Now,
okay.
So going to CCAR and understanding that everyone in the building sees the values and the fundamental beliefs of CCAR itself, and everyone adopts it as their own and treats each other kindly with full acceptance and all inclusion and putting recovery first. It's an amazing thing to watch as I see people grow right before my eyes. And when I see the growth that a strong culture can provide, you know, because when somebody slacks off, the culture comes in and says, hey, this may be a different way that's able to be done. And we each one teaches one and helps each other to strive and to be as one. And it's amazing because the kind of support we get is unfounded. I've been to many, many places, and it's the little things that we do there, you know, like the artifacts on the wall and the kind gestures and just knowing people by name. It's sick. I would say borderline. I don't know how Miss Rita can just remember everybody's name. She's starting to remember last names and portion phone numbers. I just don't know how she does it, but that's another story. But you know, just to have a core of people that that get along so well together just because of the culture being so strong brings people together.
Thank you, Edgardo. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Edgardo's part of our New Haven family here, so he's a little biased, but we'll take it. We'll take it. Kathleen, I saw your hand up.
I just wanted to say, I think one of the reasons this is so important is the what's happening in our world right now. Like COVID has altered culture in every aspect. And so, you know, why is it important? It's important because there's been like a worldwide reset to how things are done. And if you want to rebuild culture, I think it has to be done intentionally. And so it's like, here it is. This is so poignant because of what's going on in the world.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. Mr. Lazarus.
Yes, you made reference to this earlier, and something I completely agree with. You can have all the beautiful mission statements and vision statements in the world, but if you don't have a culture that supports it, that mission statement dies on the vine very quickly. And it's a, and it's up to, I'll use my own experience in CCAR, a very different environment that I'm used to. And I had to learn and understand and ultimately embrace the culture of the New Haven Center. Either that or I should leave, one or the other. But and I think it's beautiful to have the mission statement on the wall and the vision points. But again, it dies pretty quickly if you don't have a culture to support it.
Thank you, Ed. That means a lot to me, Ed. You know how important you are to our center here. Gina, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, organizational culture, especially just as an employee and former volunteer with CCAR. Speaking about CCAR, like CCAR, I know is like feels like a family to me, and that's how I always describe it. That's how I always like describe the culture of CCAR, I guess. I could go more into depth about that, but I'll save time. And what I love is that organizational culture, like even on like the days where I'm like tired or not feeling well, like I feel motivated to go to work because I know that my teammates have my back. I know that I'm involved in something that has meaning and that matters to everyone around me who's doing their job too. Like Rita, like, we work at the same organization, but I might not see you for like a couple weeks, but I know that if I'm going to work and working hard, like, and caring about what I do, then, you're doing the same thing. And that's like, I've never worked at an organization like that. A lot of times I've worked at companies that, I'm pulling more of the weight and someone's pulling less of the weight. Or sometimes like in my life, I haven't pulled some of the weight and someone's pulled my weight, and that's kind of that like toxic culture. But especially as an EDRC coach, like I'll wake up and I don't know what's in store for me that day. I might have 5 emergency department calls and 3 of them might come in at the same time. And what do? I can't be 3 places at once. And I know I have somebody on my team who's going to call and say, hey, like, I will take that call while you're out on that other call. I got your back. And it's like, that's what is so great about like that cultural environment, is that I know that someone has my back because that's how great the culture is. So
thank you, Gina. And if Gina doesn't mind my sharing, Gina, is it okay that I share a little bit about how you ended up here with us at CCAR?
You go right ahead.
So Gina was actually somebody that was seen in the ER and received our services by our recovery coaches. She was connected to one of our centers here, luckily New Haven Center. She volunteered here, and Gina is now a CCAR ED, Emergency Department Coach. So I think that really is a beautiful circle to show how much good stuff is happening and how the environment is really loving and supportive. I'm super proud of that. There was actually two volunteers from New Haven that are ED coaches. So in the short time we've been here, I'm extremely proud of that. And I just can't thank you enough. And I'm so proud of the work you're doing, Gina.
You've helped me a long way, more than you know.
I'm glad you're here, Gina. Thank you. Mike, next slide. Yeah, there we go. So I just wanted to shift gears a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that I did trying to start out the center in New Haven. Once again, it was a brand new center. I had to wait for the offices to be built, the bathroom to be built. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and I had no clue. I had never run a recovery community center before. I just knew what I wanted. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't used since 1989. And I've been collecting quotes and inspirational sayings. I had bags of stuff at home, and I knew what kind of an environment I wanted. I envisioned what I wanted the center to look like. I envisioned what made me feel safe and secure in early recovery. You know, I really wanted people to know from the minute they walked inside that they were in good hands, that they were not alone anymore, they were connected. So, you know, in New Haven, we use a lot. First and foremost, we have a high standard of cleanliness here. We have a home-like environment. We have inspirational signs and sayings on the wall. People are welcome to put signs up, take a quote, leave a quote. We have positive quotes that inspire. I have all kinds of murals, paper on the walls that have quotes on them. People use them for meeting topics. They use them, they take a quote, they leave a quote. You know, they really take pride in the surroundings. I want to say to you that I've had numerous people in recovery, early recovery, come in and see the center and me, you know, encourage them to come back and use the services. And they'd stand at the front door on their way out and they'd look back and they'd say, I can really hang out here. I'm like, yes, absolutely, you can hang out here. Because, you know, a lot of times in our field, the places that we go are dirty and dingy and dark. They're not well lit. They're not bright. They don't, you know, give us the light that we need to help us grow and have our spirits soar again in recovery. So people see the center and they just love that it's so bright and cheery and open. You know, we use creative outlets here at the center. We encourage, so a lot of times when we're doing orientations or trainings or other things like that, people always say, well, I want to become a recovery coach. I want this, I want this, I want this. And I always pause and I say, I love that you want all those things, but I'd love to know what you'd like to bring to the center. Tell me about what your gift is. What is your talent? What is your skill? What kind of class would you like to teach? People just get blown away by the fact that they can become one amongst here. You know, the goals of all 5 of our centers. This stuff happens in all of our centers, you guys. But I can only speak about what I've tried to create in New Haven. But, you know, people just get blown away by the fact that they can do, you know, I see somebody doodling. I'm like, you doodle? Would you like to do the next mural that goes on the wall? And then to see people come in and see their artwork on the wall, to see the look on their face, like, wow, somebody put something up that I created, you know? So we encourage that. You know, we find things for share that we can share enthusiasm around. Of course, we support recovery events, right? We do recovery walks. We walk around the neighborhood and walk down to the green and promote recovery. But we also build scarecrows, and we have young, old, black, white, brown, you know, straight, gay. We have a whole family out there putting a scarecrow together. You know, I have pictures to portray all of this stuff. Just everybody loving each other, having fun, walking around like, you know, Halloween creatures. There's just been so many beautiful things that people come together. This afternoon, we have a gentleman, one of our volunteers who, he's bringing his guitar and they're going to be playing music out there in the center at 2 o'clock, and people are just going to hang around and sing and have fun, you know? So we really try to find ways that we can all share the enthusiasm of what we want to happen here. It's just such a beautiful thing. So I'm just, you know, think about some of those things. Think about some of the ways that you can bring some of that stuff back. What would you like to see in your center? I had a vision of how I wanted people to feel when they got here. Kathleen, do you mind sharing about what happened, or when somebody asked you when you were here for the open house? A lot of the stuff on the walls here came from our home and all the years of recovery. I get inspirational signs and sayings, and I wanted to use all that to make the center feel welcome and like a home. So Kathleen was here the night of the open house, and a reporter had talked to her. And what did that conversation entail?
So the person said to me, you know, oh, I love it here. It's so, it feels so much like a home. It feels home-like. I can't believe how homey it feels. And I said, yeah, I actually feel like I'm sitting in my living room because everything on the walls belong to me.
So the reporter got a kick out of that, but really the truth is it's just that everybody kind of has that feel, you know, even though our center is smaller than some of the other centers, we don't have as much space as some of the other centers. You know, we do try to build a homey feel here and make it inclusive, make people welcome. And you know, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the other ways that we do that. Next slide, Mike. So, I really believe, that culture can be created in the little things. I really believe that, we welcome diversity. Here we have on our front door, we have a chain of people, these beautiful colors, and men and women and women and women and men, and we don't care. Everybody is welcome in this center. We want diversity here. We want people to know. And from the second they step up to the front porch, that's what they see in the left-hand picture there. They see that chain of people saying, all are welcome here. There's nobody that is not welcome here. Myself and my volunteer manager, we go out, we introduce ourselves, particularly if it's the first time they've been in the center. Hi, my name's Rita. I'm the center manager. Welcome. How can we help you today with your recovery? I remember everybody's name. It's a funny joke here at the center because I'm a little bit older and they think I'm a little bit, on the declining side, but I blow their mind when I can recite everybody's name. I can facilitate a meeting, go around the table and remember 22 people sitting at the table. And I got to tell you guys, people, that matters to people. I'm telling you, it matters. I've met people on the streets in New Haven that have said to me, I can't believe you remember my name. I've only been in the center once. Think about that. Think about when we were early in recovery. Think about how many people didn't want us around. When they come in here, we welcome them. We embrace them. We give them a hug. If that's okay, I'll ask, may I give you a hug? From the very first day, some of our folks have stepped inside the center and have never left. Edgardo, can you share a little bit about your experience when you first entered the center, if you would be so?
The first time I entered the center, I was welcomed with open arms. I actually came in during a meeting and I sat right down and we were going into like a poem. It was gratitude and I had to take each letter of gratitude, make a poem out of it. And as soon as we completed it, the poem, I felt valued because right away, Ms. Rita came up and says, hey, can I take this poem and show it to my boss? Because it really came well together and we received it really well. And I was just like overwhelmed. I was like overwhelmed with joy because first time I was ever writing anything like that. So right away, the whole room encouraged and appreciated that moment. And then she learned my name. And then after the group, it was like everyone took turns embracing me and walking me through the building. And I was like, I could do this. It took that type of encouragement. But after, the feeling that I had when I left out of the building was I wanted more. And that was the special part because when you feel love at that capacity, it feels good. It feels good. And it felt genuine, being greeted like that. It's just amazing on that one part of just making the connections that fast. Because we always say, walking through the door, you're already family. Everything else is a plus.
Thank you, Edgardo. I appreciate you sharing that. Sometimes hearing from folks that are in the center is far more powerful than hearing from me as a center manager. Ed Lazarus, would you mind sharing how maybe something that you believe when you first got here and once you were here for a while and you kind of adopted the culture? Would you mind sharing a little bit about how you think and change around some stuff? Or?
Yeah, not at all. I think that, and I have to preface it by saying this has been a different experience for me. It's the culture I worked in was much different. And sometimes I've struggled to make the adaptation, but I think Rita is fond of telling a story about cell phones and, walking in, and my view is, really, why do we have to buy cell phones for people? Or why am I having to buy cell phones for people? And then after working volunteering, at the center for a while, I began to realize that if people didn't have a cell phone, they had nothing. They couldn't find their way clear to utilize any of the services that are available. And it dawned on me that it's a good investment in people. And in fact, in the long term, it's saving money. So that's an example of, my orientation change. You know, also I like to, you know, I get crazy when people come late to all recovery meetings. And I said to Rita once, we should lock the door right at 12:30. And she said to me, Ed, we're happy to, and Edgardo said something that was stuck with me, both very similar things, that, you know, we're happy they make it through the door. And it doesn't necessarily mean whether it's at 12:30 or 12:35 or 12:45. So, you know, I came to the center, I really had I didn't know what to expect at all. You know, I tell the story over and over again, and it still makes me laugh, is, you know, I'm in recovery. I didn't make the connection that this would be a place that could support my recovery. I just figured I'd be helping the director do whatever, answering phone calls, taking messages, doing, etc., administrative stuff, because that's what I've always done. You know, and it suddenly, well, you know, I have 5 pillars that support my recovery, and CCAR is one of them. That was not my expectation coming. You know, and what I say to people when I'm asked to give somebody a tour is that it's a non-judgmental zone. We're not interested in so much where you've been, although from a kind of historical perspective that has some importance, but we're more interested in where you're going.
Amen.
You know, and that to me, those two things are one of the most important things about the culture of the center, and from what I've observed, you know, I think all the volunteers have bought into that, you know, and I more so than many of the other organizations I've worked for. So yeah, it's been, you know, for me, it's been a tremendous transformative experience, and I've gotten to know sorry, Edgardo, I'm going to use you as an example again. But Edgardo is a classic example of somebody I never would have run into before. You know, and somebody who I have a deep amount of respect for, and, you know, and that I probably would have written off. I'm embarrassed to say that today, but that's the truth. And that's how the transformation has occurred in me. So I don't know if that's what you wanted what you're thinking about, but that's what I feel.
I had no agenda, Ed. I just wanted them to hear some thoughts from you. I appreciate that. So that's something that I think our culture promotes, is getting to know people, not looking at their resumes or not looking at their history or their background checks. We actually get an opportunity to meet people today. And Ed, you know, was an executive at a high level for most of his career. And he said to me one day, you know, Edgardo is a perfect example of someone that I would have threw his resume in the garbage because of his, you know, whatever might not have been suitable for our agency. And he said, but I'd hire this guy in a second. And that's what a culture can do for people, you guys. It can open people's eyes and actually get to have you see each other rather than just seeing what's on paper. So even in New Haven, we honor their contributions. We support them. This artwork, the picture on the right-hand side is a volunteer's hand. We have so many talented volunteers in the center. All centers, I'm sure, can talk about that. So many artists and sewers and writers and musicians. And it's just so beautiful that we provide them a place that they can share their talents and share their gifts and share their skills. So I guess I just want you guys to think about is that, you know, I think culture is in the little things. I think it's in the unwritten things that we do every day that build that inclusivity. We have a lot of fun in the center. We encourage team building. We help them believe, you know, we help each other believe in ourselves. Just this morning, a volunteer said to me, I love that every day I'm here, you say, thank you for coming today. I appreciate you coming today, and thank you for your volunteer service. He just said that to me this morning. I said, well, you're welcome, and thank you for coming today, because I appreciate you being here. But, you know, sometimes, you guys, we don't really realize the little things that we might do for somebody by welcoming welcoming them, having a supportive culture. I have one more short little story about that. I had a volunteer in my center. One day I asked him to run in my office to get something. The next day he came to me almost in tears and he said, you know, people my whole life have told me that they trust me, and you proved to me that you trust me. I said, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, yesterday you allowed me to go into your office without following me. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes just the little things that we can do for people to help bring them back to life again. Those people come and become some of the most productive people. They go back out into the recovery field and they bring that culture with them. So it matters, you guys. The little things matter. You know, I'm currently working on no cell phones at our community table. And, you know, in the beginning, I got a little bit of a pushback. You know, they can sit in the back chairs, they can sit in the chairs in the corner, but at that community table, I'm trying to get people to talk to each other. And, you know, the last 3 days, people have been doing puzzles, people have been drawing, people have been having conversations. And I've had several people themselves say to me, wow, I kind of like not having any cell phones at the main table. I feel like we're communicating more and we're engaging more. So I just want you to know that the little things do matter. And I just would like you to think about that as we move on. Michael, next slide. So I really believe inclusivity is a byproduct of the culture. And what I'm kind of really talking about here is, you know, we often hear people say that if we feel included, then we have a good culture. I kind of think it's opposite. I think that inclusivity is the byproduct of a good culture. I really believe that that's kind of what makes people feel safe and secure and heard and valued. I think, you know, each individual piece collectively builds into that positive culture. So some of the things that we try to do and some of the ways that we've done that, increasing that communication and that inclusivity in New Haven is, you know, we have conversations. So I put 1 month on the calendar, courageous conversation, thinking it would just be a whim, you know. So we do a community meeting every month. The volunteers said, I really like the courageous conversations. We talk about white privilege. We talk about racism. We talk about homophobia. We talk about, you know, different cultures and who's more, you know, who's more privileged than other cultures. We talk about is addiction a disease or a choice. We have all kinds of courageous conversation. The only requirement is that we listen to each other respectfully and we honor each other's opinion. Thank you, Ed. I see that you guys will be closing. I'm sorry you'll miss the best parts, but that's okay. Well, so we have courageous conversations and people actually want to continue those courageous conversations. I think the more we understand each other and the more we, you know, build bridges rather than walls, I think we're on the right path with a lot of this stuff. We have zero tolerance in the Center for Racism and Homophobia. We nip it in the bud immediately. We've had little incident of anything like that happening. But if it does happen, we talk about it. We talk about culture every week in the center. So I guess we steal that from leadership. I hear Phil say that at every staff meeting we go to. Michael can attest to that and other staff here. We talk about culture every week in the center. How's our culture doing? Are people feeling loved? Are people feeling respected? Are people feeling supported? We're always making sure that volunteers are training and guiding other volunteers respectfully, not authoritatively. We always want that to be gentle and kind to each other. We support each other and we build each other up. If somebody has something going on in their family, we ask about it. How can we help support you? What's going on? How's your wife doing? How's, you know, Ed doing? He just had surgery. I've had volunteers come in here every day asking about Ed. You know, we actually have a family here. We build good relationships with our neighbors and our communities, you guys. We're not in competition with anybody. There is not enough resources to serve our communities, right? We are not in competition. We all serve the same people. So it's really important. You know, our neighbors are happy to have us here. And I can tell you, when I was looking for real estate to open the community center, my conversations with realtors genuinely went like this. Well, what would you like to do with the available space? I said, well, we're going to build a recovery community center. And the next response would be, oh, so I'm going to have a bunch of alcoholics and addicts hanging around all day getting high. And I'd say, no, sir, with all due respect, you're going to have people in the community giving back to the community, people getting well and becoming productive members of our society. So I just, I want you to know that people pay attention now. We made our own t-shirts and we go out and we pick up garbage in the neighborhood. I had a woman, we were doing the cleanup one day and a lady said, I've been here 30 years and I've never seen anyone come by here and pick up garbage. And we all have our CCAR shirts on. It makes them curious about what's going on over there at CCAR, right? Right, Mike? So, I mean, like, this is great stuff. And these are all ideas that we come up with together with our community. There's only 2 staff in the centers, you guys. The rest of the center is run by the volunteers and visitors. So, we build good relationships. We support other organizations, other events. We show up and put a table up and say, we're here to support you. We treat people as resources. We welcome their differences and their thoughts and their opinions and their suggestions. We have a suggestion box out on the table. Every community meeting, we have a community meeting once a month. We read those suggestions, and most of the suggestions that have been in that box have already been implemented or put into effect at the center. Somebody said, I need a computer class. I don't know. I'm a returning citizen. I don't know how to use my phone. We have a computer class on the calendar every Mondays at 2 o'clock. So we listen to people. And I think what happens is when we do that, people actually feel heard and respected, and that helps them buy into the culture. For me as a center manager, I need to make sure I'm noticing who's not at the table and how can I get them here. And that's who I go out. I sit in on committees. I sit in on the harm reduction committee. I sit in on the reentry roundtable meeting. I want to know how can we make it more open and inclusive for the people that we don't see at the centers. So those are just some of the things that we try to do, to keep that positive culture going. Michael, next slide. So now that I talked you guys' ear off, I am hoping that maybe I want you guys to think about, what is your current culture right now where you are? How often do you talk about culture? Can someone give me an example about culture that reflects what's important to your organization? There's 3 different questions there. I'd love for you guys to put your hand up and share with us. Thank you, Orlando. You are amazing as well. And I can't wait to see you at the center again. Come back soon, okay? So there's 3 different questions here, guys. I'm not going to tell you which question. Is there any question that resonates or somebody would like to share and talk about? We have a couple more questions on the next page. But first of all, I wanted us to establish what does our culture look like today before we go to the next slide. Go ahead, Nita.
So something that was really interesting to me, and thank you for that previous slide, because that just is more guidance from CCAR, in my view, of good things to do. I was recently at a conference in England, and a gentleman stood up and spoke, and he said, oh, we're so lucky. Our community organization has grown so much. We have 64 employees. And then he said, it's grown so much, I don't even know all their names. And my heart sank, because I just went, I know Phil knows all of his employee names at CCAR. And, and I just thought that right there was the clear display of the difference of culture and how those people are valued. And I mean, it just planted a seed in me, I am going to do my best no matter what. That I remember people's license plates on their cars better than their name. It's really random. You pull up in a car, I know your license plate for life, but names might. But I just think that just proved a point to me about that. Clearly told me what that culture was and what I didn't want my culture to be, And I think that on your previous slide, you'd had at the bottom it said who's not at the table, and I was really grateful this past week because somebody invited my daughter to speak on a panel on a stage in front of 400 people. But somebody previously had told her she was too young to speak. Okay. And so I messaged this guy and I said, thank you for giving my daughter a seat on the stage and letting her voice be heard. And so I think just all of those things that you do, even if we're not big enough yet to do them, it just plants the seed of what we are going to do. And I mean, I've been reading Brene Brown's book about the heart, and the whole thing about, man, I have disconnected with a lot of people and I have reconnected with some, because to me, I'm going to go where I belong and not where I have to fit in. And I want people to belong and not have to fit in with me. So that's sort of become, for me, a bit of the culture I'm going to embed in the work I do. You know, I don't want anybody to ever have to say, I don't fit in with what you're doing with CCAR in the UK. I will find a space and make a space at that table for them. So Rita, thank you so much. I'm just inspired. Khaleesi's going to kill me. I've got like 900 more jobs and social media posts for her to think about.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. And we're not done yet too. I'm going to kind of try and get you guys to commit to you know, making, anyway, we'll get there. But thank you, Rita. I appreciate you sharing that. And you're right, it is important. Just remembering somebody's name or sharing something. I shared in our recovery meeting once about how I see hearts everywhere, how I take pictures of stones and leaves and trees, and everywhere I go. I ask my girlfriend, we walk and I see hearts everywhere. I think they follow me. And I was walking down the street with our director of advocacy yesterday, going to get lunch, and a gentleman was on his way to the center, and he stopped me on the street and he said, oh, I needed to tell you, you know who I am, right? I said, yeah, I know who you are. You're heading up to the center, right? And he said, yes. And I said his name. And then he said, I just saw a website that takes pictures of hearts. He said, so all the stuff you were talking about, he said, there's a whole website out there. So, you know, little things that you do or say, people are listening. When they feel safe, when they feel heard, when they feel welcome, they carry this stuff with them. So I know there's got to be more than just one person that would like to share about their current culture. Thank you, Maureen. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you so much. So please, I would love to hear somebody else share about an example, or do you guys talk about culture? What kind of things, how often you guys talk about culture? Go ahead, Gina.
Yes, at CCAR, we obviously talk about culture often. And I think that's something that really like stood out to me when I onboarded for this job, especially, is like everywhere else I've worked, especially like in a corporate setting, we like kind of sat the first week and did this training. What is our company culture? This is our mission statement. This is our vision statement. Okay, did you complete that checkbox? Yes. And it's like we never heard about it again. And here at CCAR, like, it's a conversation. We don't like do some weird tutorial that feels corporate, and it's a conversation, right? Because we're a part of the culture, like each individual. And like I felt part of the culture since day one when I was seen in the emergency room, and I felt like I mattered to that recovery coach that came in and helped me along my journey. Like that's when like my feeling of being part of something here at CCAR like started. And I didn't feel like I belonged to anything when I hit the bottom of my addiction. So that's incredibly important. And then when after that, I went to, you told my story, like went to detox inpatient, came back, and I was like 60 days, I'll never forget this. I was like 60 days sober, and my recovery coach like did his follow-up call to kind of see how I was doing. And he's like, you should go down to the center and like meet Rita. And I'm like, dude, like I got 60 days. Like I don't have a car. Like, I don't know like what I could possibly contribute to this center in New Haven. Like I'm in West Haven. Like what do they want to do with me? He's like, no, go. He's like, I'll meet you there. Like, I'll introduce you to people. Like you're not working right now, right? So maybe you should volunteer. And I was like, if you want to meet me there, dude, like, okay. And like he showed up, and like I remember meeting Rita, and I'm like, wow, like they want me to be a part of this. Like, and this seems really cool. and I already am kind of a part of this. So like, maybe I should be more a part of this. And that's kind of been the thread, because when the job opened up, I was like, maybe I should be more a part of this. And I thought back to that day when I decided to come down to that center with a lot of push, that I was worthy of, you know, taking that next step and being part of something like this, bigger than myself.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate you sharing that. Really, that's great stuff. I think I saw Ed Lazarus. I think I saw your hand next.
Yep, I do. Yeah, I don't have a place of business anymore other than volunteering at CCAR. So if I may, I'm going to reflect back on my past experience. And this is a culture that was developed that was not particularly healthy. I know that in retrospect, more so than when I was going through it. I worked for a lot of different college presidents, so I saw a lot of different cultures, but we all used to there was a parking lot next to the administration building, and we all had our own spots. And the culture became who can work the longest, who can work not necessarily the best, but who could put in the volume of hours, you know, and the discussion would be, oh, I saw such and such car still here at 8 o'clock last night, you know, and that became an important aspect. I've also seen presidents that didn't like to work on Fridays, and suddenly, boy, it was pretty amazing. People would kind of shoot out, you know, earlier, much earlier. But you know that, you know, in hindsight, I find it interesting because, you know, I certainly was guilty of. I use the term guilty now because I have a different perspective on it. That a culture that was not so much was based on the volume of hours you put in, equating to how good you are, as opposed to the quality of the work that you prepare and you present and what you've accomplished through that. So, you know, that was an interesting experience, but it was, and you had mentioned something about unintended things. It was the parking lot. Everybody watched the parking lot. And if the president's car disappeared, so did everybody else's 5 minutes later.
Interesting. And I appreciate you sharing that, because you reminded me of a previous experience as well, is that sometimes organizations and agencies, they mean well. And when you're doing really well, they reward you with more responsibility and more expectations on you. And so you don't always get to, right? You just don't always get to, you're kind of, you work hard, you're a good employee, and your reward is here's more work, you know. And Ed, yes, someone in the chat put that's super common. They found in a lot of work environments. Absolutely, I agree. Abigail, would you like to unmute and share something? We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I was just saying that I've noticed that a lot in a lot of the work environments. And I like what you just said, Rita, like, here's your reward. It's more work, more like making work your life instead of having work and then life separate. So I thought that was a really good point. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Abigail. I appreciate it. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I just love hearing from people. And yes, you know, I think they mean well in the beginning, but they overwhelm us. And then, you know, we feel like we're letting them down if we say, hey, I can't navigate this. And, you know, that is another thing about our culture at CCAR is self-care is really important. In my annual review, my boss said, I have one thing I want you to do, take more time off. I've never been told that in my life, you know what I mean? So we really do encourage our communities to practice self-care, but they also do that at, you know, in-house. They really do practice that in-house. And I will tell you this as well, and it almost makes me want to cry. As we all know, a lot of us go through cancer treatments and surgeries and deaths in the family, and we are so loved and supported here. I can't even begin to tell you that. How amazing it is to know that your job isn't in jeopardy because you have a life situation going on. And And that's all part of the culture, you guys. It's so important. And we all deserve that. All of us deserve that. So thank you for sharing, Abigail. I appreciate it. Edgardo, I see you have your hand up. Mr. Patel.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes, we can.
So yeah, it comes in twofold for me. When I facilitated groups at CCAR, I would point up at the values and our fundamental principles. And you know, it was something that the people came over to me and were like, how weird is it that you pointed at that? And after I read it, I felt that I already knew it. And it's because when we do have a strong culture, the literature doesn't have to be read because it's processed through one person to another. And we kind of like move together. And like in other organizations, they take the literature, they let you read it for a day, and they tell you this is what it's about. And then cultures form on their own. And then, you know, it's not fostered the way CCAR fosters the culture. And it's so important that that happens because, you know, our culture is so strong that when all of us get hired in other organizations, we actually know how to question an organizational culture to see if it's safe enough for us to join. Not only that, but inject CCAR values and principles through our way of living into other organizations. And they're like, wow, this guy's amazing. Why don't we try some of that stuff? And, you know, that's how we make intra-organizational connections. That's a major thing.
Thank you, Ed. Those are great points. I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. Kathleen, I see your hand.
Sorry, I won't take much time for folks, but I wanted to, you know, kind of talk about, for me, one of my responsibilities is to change the culture of the place that I'm in, and not that the people that are here are bad, but that over time culture has developed without intentional concepts, without intentional conversations, and so what has developed is not necessarily what we want. And I imagine that a lot of other people on this call may experience this sense of, you know, well, how am I going to change the culture of an entire agency? You know, I'm just this one small person. And, you know, I do think that culture is it's infectious. It's like a recovery. It's infectious. And you have to start with where you are and create, you know, to me, that's what I'm trying to do here, is to create a positive culture with the people that are immediately around me, in the hopes and the expectation that has the opportunity to then spread to the people that are immediately around them. And it's not something that happens immediately. It certainly hasn't happened immediately. I've been here for 5 years and I'm still working on it. But for me, like where I can do impact, where I can make changes is that's where my efforts and energy is. And with the hope that you know, it will spread over time. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Kathleen. Kathleen is one of my biggest supporters, you guys. So her 2 cents matters a lot to me. And she's very, very wise. I learned so much from her. So I appreciate her being here. Betsy, I see your hand up and I'd love to hear you. Welcome to CCAR, Betsy. I hear you're a brand new employee and I am super excited that you joined today. They probably made you join, but I'm glad you joined anyway.
Hi, for those who don't know me, my name is Betsy, and I'm the new DLC recovery coach for CCAR. This is actually my first week, so I'm very excited to be here. Culture, I think, is very, I remember I used to work for another agency, and I remember my last week there, they were like, I hope your new job isn't like it is here. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I started volunteering in CCAR since 2019. So I already knew the culture that I was walking into. And in my head, I was like, I started comparing the agency I worked for and where I'm at now. And even just within my first week of being a staff member, I can see the love and the support. And I keep telling everyone that I keep speaking to that I feel like I'm at home. I feel comfortable. I feel like I have shoulders that I can lean on if something was to occur. While at my other agency, I've witnessed things where I've seen a coworker who was struggling trying to understand the job, and it was like, oh, well, if you don't understand it, I don't know what to tell you, instead of trying to support and uplift. And in that aspect, I saw how the responsibility was kind of put on myself as an employee, trying to teach her a position that maybe I didn't fully understand myself because my position was different. So I feel like many agencies now today, they try to take the burden off of themselves and put it on other employees. And that's where a lot of people get stressed out and they run out dry, and then they don't know what else to do. And I don't feel that here at CCAR. I feel very loved and supported, and I feel like I'm at home, and I'm very happy to be part of the team.
Thank you, Betsy. Betsy hasn't even been to New Haven Center yet, but I'm super excited that she's just joined our team. So I appreciate it. I'm gonna go to Shannon from Iowa next, and then we're gonna go to the next slide, Mike. But Shannon, please, if you'd be kind enough to unmute, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you're thinking about.
Sure, and I just want to apologize in advance if you hear any dog barking in the background. I'm in not an ideal work environment today. So I popped in the chat just that I'm from a team in Iowa that's working on building a few new recovery community centers. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for us. And it also feels kind of daunting and overwhelming to build a positive culture from scratch, you know, because we're not really inheriting any kind of foundation. We're a brand new nonprofit. So we've been learning from CCAR and from Rita in particular, and really trying to emulate what you all have built over in Connecticut. But I'm just curious, how do we have the courageous conversations when we notice that maybe our culture isn't quite what we were aiming for, right? Because I think it takes authenticity and vulnerability to be able to say, like, okay, hold on a minute, you know, maybe this aspect of what's going on isn't really what we were going for. So any advice, especially, you know, since you're still in the early years of building a new RCC, for sort of how do we make those corrections, and how are we gentle with ourselves, gentle with our guests, and also willing to face things when it's, you know, not kind of going the way that we hoped.
Well, I appreciate that, Shannon, and I'm super glad you guys are here today. I know in New Haven, so this took a long time for me to learn, but I will say, and a lot of this came from working and learning from Kathleen, who's been a leader for many years. But as a center manager, I want to know what the problems are, because we can't change anything if we're not aware of them. A lot of times I think what happens at organizations is we try to bury our head in the sand or pretend it's not happening, or we get defensive about a complaint. And I just think it's really important that we're able to have those conversations. I think culture is something that should be at the top of your agenda if you guys have staff meetings, whether it's weekly or monthly. Now, this is just my own humble opinion, but I'm saying I think we need to talk about culture. For us, we include our community. At our community meetings, we say, what do people like? What's going on here? What's a takeaway from last month? What would you like to see moving forward? Are people happy here? Are things different? You know, what would you like? Has anybody had a situation that made them not feel welcome? So I think, Shannon, for me, the best thing we can do is to shine light on it, because no change can ever occur if we don't know about the problems. And I think that is a shift in culture from a lot of places that say, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it. That person was just complaining, or that person couldn't be pleased. I think it's important as an, you know, CCAR never, we never present as the fact that we know everything. You know, Phil asks staff about what we think, about what our opinions are, about what projects we should get involved in. So I think that's another example as well, is bring your team together, recognize everybody's thoughts and opinions, value everybody's thoughts and opinions, from the receptionist up to the executive director. I think one of the things that makes us successful in New Haven is myself and my volunteer manager, we do not try to, dictate or dominate. It's a center. Our volunteers run the center. Their happiness has to be utmost importance to us. Otherwise, our centers fail. So recognize that and have, I think you, just by you putting it on the table, you're recognizing that. And I think you most definitely need to be gentle with yourself because you're brand new. So I just think it's really important. So thank you. I hope some of that helped. I'm always here as a resource for you, Shannon. I see Edgardo's hand, but I am gonna just push off to the next slide, Mike, because we have 15 minutes left, guys, but we only have one last slide, 2 slides as well. So Ed, what were you hoping to share?
I just wanted to share the suggestion box that we also have. That was a major key because a lot of the suggestions that go in there are actually implied by community meeting.
Absolutely. And Shannon, that's something you could do is to say, what kind of activities would you guys like to see in the center? What, talk to your community. Our community teaches us everything we need to know to run the community center. I want you to know that. Our community teaches us everything. So this is, we have 2 slides last. We did talk about, Michael said, ask good questions. Absolutely. Our community will teach us everything we need to know. We just need to be able to ask the right questions, listen, manage our own stuff. We can't get defensive when we hear feedback. We can't take it personal. So we did just, some of us gave some examples of what we do, what we're not doing. I just want you don't have to respond to these if you don't want to. If anyone has a desire to share one of these questions, please do. I really just want to touch on, Jackie, thank you. A new hand, I love it.
Hi. So one thing, Rita, I wanted to mention too, that hasn't come up yet, that Phil does with every staff member, Phil and Jolie's, the stay interviews.
That's right.
So a lot of employees get nervous about that because they think they're being asked to leave, but actually the stay interviews that Jolie, and so Jolie is the Director of Human Resources and Administration at CCAR. So they meet with every employee and ask them the reasons why they like to stay and continue to work here at CCAR and areas in which there can be improvements made. So I think that's fabulous because I think a lot of the information that they get in maintaining a positive culture and keeping employees happy and making sure that their voices are heard are, come from those stay interviews. And I know they make it a priority. Both of them, both Jolie and Phil, make it a priority to talk to everyone. And I know Phil every day goes around and, I think just personally, both of them are great examples of just people who want to take care of people. And I think, that makes a huge difference when it comes from the top down.
I love that, Jackie. I appreciate you saying that as well. And I think it's true. And even in a new organization like in Iowa, Shannon, that's something that you guys can consider doing. I know it's premature now, but what kind of organization would you like to work at? What type of things would you like to see here? There's some really good questions that can help you kind of intentionally build that culture that you're looking for. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate that. And we did talk about a couple of things on here. So the thing I just want to touch on is how do you value employees? The volunteers, the community you serve, other staff. And we do a lot of things in the centers. We do a lot of things at CCAR as a whole. Every year they have a big volunteer recognition event. COVID put a little nix on that, but before COVID, we did a big swanky dinner and dancing all people had to do, I think, was volunteer like 10 hours or at least 10 hours or more. We give awards for years, you know, how many volunteer hours of service. We just had a big picnic up at Hammonasset Beach Park. We had one at an amusement park. So we try to do a lot of activities. The centers welcome family members, friends. It's not just for people in recovery themselves. So that's another way of building inclusivity in the centers, is making it a family affair. Think about some of the ways that you might show your employees or your volunteers or your community how you appreciate them. We do a monthly volunteer recognition, and we honor a volunteer of the month. They normally get a gift card as well as a plaque saying, you know, we appreciate your service. We have pins that we give out. We have impromptu pizza parties from time to time out on the front porch. Right now, due to COVID, we're still trying to social distance a bit, but there's so many ways that you can make people feel valued. I tell you, the gentleman this morning said to me, I appreciate that every day you say to me, thank you for being here today. And wow, just a simple thank you. And that makes, you know, something that he thought to talk to me about this morning before he even knew about my webinar. So it was authentic and it was real, and I really appreciate that. So it might be helpful if you guys can think about ways you can show that you value the people that you serve or the people that work with you, your organization and your employees. And Michael, I think there's one more slide. So guys, here's where I'm going to try and get you guys to commit to something, okay? So I'd like each one of you, of course, I can't check, many of you aren't here, but you know, the research shows, of course, that when we write things down, we're more likely to make them happen, right? So I'm kind of asking, you know, that maybe each one of you write 2 or 3 things down that you would like to, you know, commit to, that you're going to try to implement at your place within the next 1 or 2 weeks. And the reason I'm asking you to also put a timeline on it is because it's kind of like, you know, so if I run into an old friend on the street and I say, hey, nice to see you, we need to do lunch sometime. Or I say, hey, so nice to see you, why don't we do lunch at 2 o'clock on Friday? I'd love to catch up. Which one of those things is more likely to happen, right? So I'm asking that you write down 2 or 3 things that you want to implement, and I'd like you to put a time limit on that and hold yourself accountable to that. I would love for anyone to reach out to me and shoot me a text as to say, here are the things I came up with. We do have 5 minutes if anyone would like to share their ideas or their commitment. I would love to hear that before. I think it's a great way for us to wrap up. So if anyone be so, I see Kathleen writing. She's, you know, she's got a lot of responsibility over there. So why don't we call her out and see what she's got? And then I would love if somebody else would like to share. Please, we have a couple minutes and then we're going to wrap up. Kathleen, what are your 3 things?
So I didn't get a chance to do 3 things yet. I have one written down, and the one that I have written down, actually, you just mentioned, which was, you know, when you said that you do volunteer recognition, which of course I knew about, but you mentioned something about pins, and it made me think of, you know, there's some you know, inexpensive things that we could purchase that could be used to, you know, just give people a simple, small recognition. And I mean, what does it cost? You know, maybe $50, $100, even if it costs $100, I'll take it out of my pocket, because the value return would be massive. So that's the one thing I got written down. But I'll work with my other 2.
Thank you. And I will hold her accountable, you guys, I promise. But I just wanted to show you guys a pin that we have. It says CCAR volunteers make a world of difference. And they're just tiny little pins here. I don't know if anyone can see that, but you know what? Volunteers love these. They matter to people. So thank you, Kathleen. I love the thought that, you know, that's something simple that maybe you guys might be able to squeeze out of the budget there. I appreciate that. I think Nita was next, and then we'll go to Ed.
So this has been fabulous. And 2 things I'm definitely going to figure out a way to implement from this are how to create a platform to have courageous conversations with all the people in our community and our students. And there's something around that stay interview that really lit me up. So thank you for sharing that. I can't see your name on this dodgy little iPad place gave me. Jackie because I think that, to me, I just instantly went, we've got, probably 100 people that don't engage with us often, but they're part of our community. So how can I use that type of conversation to say, you're really valued, we'd love you to have more presence, please come stay with us. So yeah, you belong, you don't have to fit in, just stay.
That's right. Thank you, Nathan. I'm going to be
That's
happy
great.
I'm going to be happy to check in with you on Zoom in the next week or two so we can
You
hold
can be
to...
my accountability buddy any day of the week.
I would love to. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to do it.
Yes. I just messaged Khalees and I just put those two things in a message and she just messaged me back with that monkey face like this.
I'll tell you, the Courageous Conversations really took hold here. People really like them. I was shocked. I thought they wouldn't want to, they love them. They really have been enjoying them. And I throw out topics to them as well. What do you guys want to talk about? I don't need to dictate the topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
That's really good. And I think I worked with somebody today who, he said, if everybody who was worked in the drug and mental health services in England had the heart and the art, I wouldn't be calling you today. So there's a space to have conversations about how we improve that. So thank you all so much for everything you've given me today. Man.
Thank you for joining us, my long distance friend. Ed, you're up.
Yes. Well, this is kind of a combination of the last slide and this slide. Again, I'm retired, so I'm in a kind of a different place, but what I hope I would do is I would be clear on my expectations, and I'm coming in from a manager's perspective, and that I'd hold people accountable when the culture is something is not right, consistently, not regardless of who the person is. And then finally, and the most important thing to me is make sure that I'm embodying all the aspects of the culture that I expect of others.
Thank you, Ed. That's fabulous stuff. And I appreciate you saying that too, because one thing I didn't mention is you're right. As an organization, as a center manager, as the center staff, it's our job to make sure that people know what our expectations are. We do a training around being an ambassador for the centers, what we expect of volunteers, how they represent the center. As long as they're always polite and respectful, they can say to other volunteers or visitors, oh, I'm sorry, we don't do that here, or you have to, we don't talk that way in the center. We treat each other with respect. And you're right. And that is my job as a center manager, to make sure we are making them very clear about what our expectations are. So thank you. That's an excellent point. You guys, we have 3 minutes. I would love if, somebody else wanted to share, please just give us your final thoughts. I can't thank you all enough for your participation today. I was a little bit nervous. I didn't want to look like an idiot. And when it was like 3 minutes up, I said, oh my God, Michael, are we still going to do it if there's only 4 people? And all you guys started logging in. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm really glad that this was a topic that drew interest. And I love the participation. I love your insight. And I would love for you guys to send me thoughts and ideas, please. I would really appreciate that. So thank you. That's what I got to say. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today.
Thanks.